Welcome to the Secrets of College Planning. I'm your host, Anthony Uva, and today we're going to get some insight into school counseling. My guest today is Laurie Corizzo. She is the school counselor for Paramus Public Schools. Welcome to the show.
Thank you.
So
Thanks for having
usually
me.
I start my guests where they went to school. So where'd you go to school?
College?
College.
Okay, college. I went to Seton Hall University.
Great.
Loved every minute of it. Great time in my life.
So let's go back in time before we go forward. In high school, when did it all begin for you? Was it freshman year, senior year? When did it all start for you?
Well, my mother will tell you that I was probably not much-minded, much of anything, when I was a freshman and a sophomore, but I would say probably junior and senior year. I started to get a little bit serious about thinking about next steps and going to college, and I set my sights, quite honestly, on one college. I applied to one college, and that's the one that I got into.
So now you graduate high school, you go to Seton Hall University. Tell me what it's like.
Oh, it was an amazing time in my life. I actually commuted the first 2 years. I lived on campus for the next 2 years. Got to really enjoy, everything that college life was about. And I'll stop there.
Okay, good. So you go to college, you graduate. So how does one go from graduating Seton Hall to becoming a school counselor?
So the next step in my process was pursuing a master's degree. And I actually, thank goodness, in retrospect, now I'm glad I didn't have to go back to school while I was working full-time. I went straight to Marywood University in Scranton, Pennsylvania, and pursued elementary school counseling. 3 years later, I completed that degree, moved back home to New Jersey, and started the process of finding employment.
So how did you find Paramus Public Schools?
Well, that was not until a long time after that point. In the interim, I had to, in addition to having my master's, I then had to attain my teaching certificate. In the state of New Jersey, at that time, you needed to be a teacher, not an elementary teacher, a teacher in addition to having your credentials for being a school counselor. So I didn't have the teaching part, so I went back to school to Caldwell. I was forever a student, to Caldwell College, and I got my teaching cert, taught for a year. After I had the year teaching, applied for counseling jobs.
Oh my God.
Got a job in Somerset County in the town of Manville, which will always be in my heart, and stayed there for 15 years. And then after that, it was a 90-minute commute each way. So after 15 years, I wanted to try to find something closer to home. Mm-hmm. Paramus came up, I interviewed for the position, and I've been there for the past 10 years.
Wow, fantastic. So now you're at the Paramus public schools system. And what does a counselor do there?
So, elementary school counselors are basically part of a multidisciplinary team. We all work together, the principal, the teachers, the nurse, the support staff in the building, to support children. It's all about making sure that they're reaching their goals, that they're reaching their optimal performance. So as a counselor and also a teacher, a big part of my job is teaching. I actually go into classrooms and teach social emotional learning lessons to the children. We utilize a curriculum called Second Step. Then after that, I will pull children in small groups based on need. For example, if we have a bunch of children whose parents are divorced, I might create a group where they can come and we can, talk about what that's like, and I can support them emotionally in that journey for them. Then after that, which doesn't happen too often, if children need individual attention, that's also something that I can do. Then, kind of list goes on and on, I hope that's okay. Then I am also the anti-bullying specialist in the school, as well as it's called MTSS, Multi-Tiered System of Supports.
Wow.
Coordinator. So children that are struggling academically, emotionally, or behaviorally, again, we come together as a team and we talk about we brainstorm ways to best support them. And then finally, although it's never really over, but that's okay, I am also the 504 coordinator for the building.
Wow. You got a lot of hats that you wear.
Yes, but I love it.
So now, back in college, how does one get into counseling? Is there a lot of things that you have to do to get into school counseling? Do you take a lot of tests, or what is entailed? Is it like being a doctor or a lawyer?
So, I wouldn't say it's as much rigor as a lawyer or a doctor. However, they're pretty similar steps. For example, when I went to get my master's degree, I then had to pass a test called the GRE. When a lawyer goes to law school, they have to pass the LSATs. Right. So you asked about tests. So my bachelor's degree was in psychology. My master's degree was much more streamlined. So I had to take and pass the teaching exam, which was the praxis at the time. Again, this is going way back. Yeah, and then upon finishing my master's degree, I had to take and pass the GRE. Okay. Yeah.
So, and then is there any other certificates that you take as you go along, or is it something that you're constantly learning as you go throughout the years?
You're definitely learning as you go. Insofar as formal certificates, I only have the 2 in the state. I'm a certified teacher and I'm a certified school counselor. However, even just being the anti-bullying coordinator, we have to take, training every year. There's training that's provided by the district that I have to participate in. And then, of course, my own association, the School Counselors Association, is yet another way of, providing professional growth. I like to present at the conference, although I didn't this year, but I have multiple years prior.
Now, in the state of New Jersey, does a counselor handle a large amount of students, or are there small groups of students that you manage?
So as a school counselor, I'm it for the building. So all of the children are under my purview. Wow. Yeah, so it's a pretty high number, but at the same time, you have to remember that not every single child is going to require your attention at every single moment in time.
Yeah. So now, another thing that you brought up is that you're also running for Board of Education.
Yes, in the town that I live in, which is Rutherford. Yeah, I'm very excited about that. I actually ran last year. Yeah. I did not win. However, I got, are you ready for this? 2,133 votes. So I was super excited by that. And I made the decision to try one more time.
Great. Yeah. So now what's entailed in becoming Board of Education?
So the process starts, like late spring. You have to get a petition, if you will, from the county, which of course is Bergen County, which is where I live. You have to get 15 signatures of support from community members. And there are a bunch of requirements that go along with that. Like, for example, you have to be 18. You have to live in the town that you're running in for, I believe it was a year. You have to be able to read and write. There are some requirements for that. So after that, it's really exciting to see how this whole process unfolds. And I have to be perfectly honest with you, I didn't know how it went until I experienced it. So the last Monday in July, you have to turn in your petition, and then August 15th, around there, they draw names to decide where you're going to be on the ballot. So I went back up to Bergen County on August 15th, and I was thrilled when my name was pulled first. So I'm really excited. So I'm in the #1 spot on the ballot.
Wow.
Yeah, and then from there, it's election day.
So now, what are some of the positions that you get on the Board of Education?
Well, the board is just that. It's a board. So there really aren't, well, there is a president and there is a vice president. Okay. But I believe, and don't quote me on this, that those are elected positions within the board. Okay. So basically you are just brought on as what's considered a trustee. Okay. And I actually just attended a New Jersey School Boards Association training the other night, and I learned I learned a great analogy. They talked about a Board of Education as being like a board of directors.
Oh.
We're kind of like the governing body that kind of, helps and supports reaching goals in the district. But the superintendent is the one that's responsible for the day-to-day nitty-gritty workings of the district.
Gotcha. So all in all, you're handling a lot of the policies that are going on within the district of that school system.
Yes.
Gotcha. Now, is the Board of Education everywhere in the state of New Jersey, or is it everywhere in the whole United States?
That's actually a very good question. They're definitely in the state of New Jersey.
Okay.
And we are, I feel a very unique state because we're an incredibly densely populated state, and we have a lot of school districts. I feel like there's upwards of 700 districts in the span of 180 miles. So your question was, are there? Yes, so every town has a Board of Education, unless, it might be like a joined town, or like, for example, if there's a regional high school, they may have their own board, whereas the town may have a board for like K-8.
And what are some of the policies that the Board of Education looks at?
Well, first and foremost, you have to have, working in public education for the past 26 years, everything has a policy. And if there's ever any questions that come up, even in my job or in working with the children, that's the first place you go. You would want to make sure that you're following, of course, the policy as set forth by the district. So policies come to be based on statutes and mandates that are set forth from the state. Gotcha. And then the districts are expected to comply with those, and the way that they comply is through the use of a policy.
So now you were talking about in counseling bullying and different groups that you create and things of that sort. Get more in detail into what is entailed and things like that. What happens when a student comes up to you and says, "I've been bullied"?
Well, that kind of sets forth a whole process. New Jersey, so just to roll back really quickly, when Governor Christie was in office in 2011, he set forth this law. It's referred to as the HIB law, harassment, intimidation, and bullying. We actually, the state of New Jersey, fun fact, we were one of 6 states to have this law first. Since then, I believe all 50 states now have their own version of this law. But to come back to what you were saying, insofar as a child coming up and reporting something like that, first you try to ascertain, was it really bullying? Could it have been a conflict? So we talk a little bit to find out, some more information. And then quite honestly, it's really going to depend on those answers. There are very strict guidelines that need to be met in order for I don't want to say a conflict, in order for a situation to be deemed bullying.
Gotcha. So are there other things that come up, like these days you got a lot of school shootings and things of that sort. Does that come up in the school where you hear something and then you have to take care of something like that? Yeah,
yes. There are a multitude of things, a myriad of things that can come up on a daily basis. Just the other day, one of my, I call them my babies, they'll always be my babies. One of my babies mentioned what was going on in Israel. So when they're that young, you have to be careful with your responses. You don't want to infuse them with way too much information than they're able to absorb at that time. But just treat situations with sensitivity, with caring, with empathy. A lot of times, especially the age that I work with, they really just need to be heard. So I'm sorry, I can't really give you like a pinpoint answer because it's really going to depend on what the situation is.
So it's always the answer of whatever that student is going to, then you go into that mode of what's happening.
Exactly.
Right.
In a child-friendly manner.
So the age bracket of the students that you're working with being elementary school ages. So what's that, from 5 years old to 10?
10, well, yeah, you nailed it.
Oh,
yeah,
good.
Kindergarten to 4th grade.
Okay.
Yeah.
So the mindset of those students are way different than if you were working as a counselor in the high school. Can you show the difference of what a counselor goes through at a high school level compared to at an elementary school level?
Sure. I mean, I don't have that experiential background. However, I work very closely with all levels, the counselors in all the buildings. I think in the high school, they are more individualized and more career and next path in the journey oriented.
Yeah.
They're going to meet with kids on a much more individual basis than I would, as opposed to me, who's spending much more of my time in the classrooms, delivering lessons and working with the entire population. I'm not saying that they don't, of course they do. However, it's just kind of like in different modes, if you will.
So now when you go into the classroom, what are some of the things that you're talking out with the teachers? Because I guess you have to talk over whatever you're going to talk about with the teachers of the class, right?
Absolutely. Well, we do the best, and I say we, my colleagues and I do the best that we can to make sure that the teachers are familiar with the curriculum that we're teaching. I would say more than not, the teachers stay in the room so that they can kind of support or jump in as needed. Oh, Mrs. Corizzo, we just talked about listening the other day. Mrs. Rice, that's amazing. That's what we're going to talk about today. So, we kind of just support one another. And then, of course, at separate times, not really while I'm teaching, we can't really discuss certain kids, but at certain times, we can absolutely talk about certain children or certain trends or things that they're seeing in their classroom.
Now, when you go to the different meetings throughout the state for counseling and things, what are some of the things that come up statewide?
Well, I would be remiss if I didn't mention, of course, the pandemic and dealing with post-pandemic. I'll just refer to them as issues because there are many of them. Not only are we looking at the academic side, learning loss. Unfortunately, I think a lot of districts are having to deal with that. But then, of course, there's also that emotional piece and that behavioral piece that you may not have seen in full force while we were like at home learning or virtual learning, but now that we're all back in the classroom, you can kind of see the effects that the pandemic has had. So that would probably be like numero uno in terms of issues. And then if I had to say, having just been at my conference yesterday, actually, it's funny that you bring that up. The second issue would definitely be supporting mental health, reducing the stigma of mental health, children that need services, adults that need services, families that need services. I think that's probably number two. And number three, the big part of number one is that academic loss and the role that we all play in supporting the children to try to make up for that.
So now if someone wants to vote for you, they have to be in Rutherford.
That is correct, yes.
And do they do it through general elections?
General election, yeah. On November 7th, vote position 1, Mrs. Corizzo, no, Laurie Corizzo.
So we're coming to the end of our show.
Okay.
And usually I ask my guests, what advice do you want to give to students and parents that might want to get into counseling, want to go to college for it? What advice do you want to give them?
Wow. Well, I think first and foremost, it's something that's in your heart. If you are the type of person that likes to help other people, be around other people, engage with people, my advice would be to go that way. Even though it's no longer a requirement to be a teacher, if you're inclined toward working in school counseling with younger children, I'm going to go back to the advice that my mother gave me that I chose not to take, which was get your teaching certificate. So get your teaching certificate, look for a program that will enable you to be well-rounded in school counseling. I honed in specifically on elementary because that's where I knew I wanted to be. But nowadays, the programs offer so many more, courses that you could take that would kind of like carry you through to high school. I'm working with an intern right now, and she is actually doing a double internship. She's doing elementary and she's doing high school. Oh. So I guess in terms of advice, be broad, kind of like have a big umbrella.
Yeah, sure. Well, thank you very much for coming on the show.
Thank you so much for having me.
So you've been watching The Secrets of College Planning. I'm your host, Anthony Uva. Until next time.